Alright, ladies and gentlemen, ignore all of this. In fact, actually, why don't we just go and do this? Ignore everything! We're making this up as we go. We're doing it live. We're doing it live. We're just gonna go ahead and scooch down to here. There we go. We could try this instead. Does this look any better? Nope, that looks decisively worse. Wow, what the crap is with that color discoloration? Yeah, let's do this instead. No, that's not great either. Surely there's something. What about this one? Nope, still not it. Where's the other one? There's actually one specific one. Oh, there it is, there it is. Found it! I found it! Okay, we're good, we're good. That's fair enough, look, we're usually doing it live. So, the idea here is this is an intended method to try and answer the many questions we have, because while the question bot and the question queue are good concepts, there are large swaths of games we play in which we don't really have a down period to answer those questions. So we're going to do it all in one big bundle, and then that way people can see it. And the idea is to do this a little bit more frequently, so we don't have 51 pages of questions. But, you know, periodically we'll just do a Q&A stream and just go through and empty out the question queue. Excuse me. So, what we need to do is we need to hit this button. We're just going to do this like this. So the first question is from Primarch the Mage. If you were to adapt Wrath of the Lich King into a tabletop RPG campaign, what are the biggest narrative changes you'd make? Honestly, none. I wouldn't change anything because I know the story so well, I could run that kind of campaign from memory. Seriously, if somebody wanted to just suddenly start playing a paladin in chat right now, I guarantee you I could run you through Wrath just from memory. No prep work, no nothing. In fact, when I was testing my Warcraft TTRPG, you know, pen and paper RPG, for a while there, I actually was using the Wrath timeline for it, specifically because most people requested that, so I literally already have experience with that. What's my favorite game company currently? Asks. Sorry, I should say who's asking these. Jay Palmer asks this. Oh gosh, that's actually a really tough question. I suppose I'm going to go ahead and default to one of the indie devs. So whoever makes the Steampunk series, which I have to look up because I don't know what they're called. Steampunk, SteamWorld. Made by Image and Form is the name of the game developer. They're apparently Swedish. And they have done some absolutely fantastic stuff, and I cannot gush about them enough. They have been legit for the last 10 years at this point. Wow, that's funny. Mockingburns says, in my opinion, what's a mod that for an already great game that was better than the game? Not improved the game by itself, but by itself was better than the game. So I suppose I'm supposed to answer one of the total conversions for like Crusader Kings 2 or EU4, but I've never played them. Or maybe one of the total conversions for Stellaris, but I never played them either. So I'm going to actually default to none, because I can't think of any examples of that. Judo Joker asks, what does Son of a Submariner mean? It means getting creative without actually cussing. And that's it. It doesn't actually mean anything. Which Final Fantasy was my favorite and therefore objectively the best Final Fantasy? 6, obviously, and even when we went back and so we did a previous review series of the Final Fantasies, and obviously those are all outdated reviews and don't count anymore, but even then FF6 was at the top of the list. Walker asks, is the DS version of Lufia 2 any good? No. Savacom says, how would you do a math game? My sister and I are actually putting real work into sitting down and designing a math D&D game. You will fight the enemies by using literal math. You'll be using multiplication as well as puzzle solving. Like you'll enter a dungeon and there will be a circuit board equation and you have to solve the circuit board equation to open the door to progress through the dungeon. This is something we're doing for her school, for actual kids, for real teaching. So I suppose that's my answer. Jay Palmer asks, is it known what happened to the Eridar after the end of the Legion? Nope. They have deliberately gone way out of their way to completely ignore the fate of all the demons left behind after the destruction of the Burning Legion. When I say Starfleet is as efficient as the Empire's Imperial military. Trihexia says, how is the Abbey of the Faithful in the Dishonored series able to block the power of the Outsider? The general idea is that they use math to do it, that they enforce order, and order is kind of the opposite of what the Outsider stands for. There's probably some more greater metaphysics behind that, but who knows? I've actually already answered this question. One moment. I'm skipping over Evo's questions for obvious reasons. Random says, what are your thoughts on the term AAA games? Indie games that have a better backing or better budget. I don't like that because it's an unnecessary additive to a term we already have. AA. We already have AA games. We've had AA games for a while now, so there's no need for it. Random also asks something that I already answered. Hang on, I've answered several of these. This is from last month. Wow. Hang on. Mockingbird says, you've expressed enjoyment of RTS games. A little bit. What I recommend for someone new to the genre? It's actually a really good question, because there's only a couple of ways to approach that. You either start with an accessible but classic version, StarCraft Remastered, or you start with the best and everything from there is downhill, which is StarCraft 2. Either way, I would probably recommend starting with StarCraft. That is what it is. It's not like there aren't other good RTSs. There's obviously Age of Empires, Total Annihilation, Dawn of War, which we'll be playing later this week, you know. But if you want to get into the series, if you want to see what seminal RTS is, it's hard to go more into that than the original StarCraft. And StarCraft Remastered is a very accessible and easy to access and easy to play game. Mockingbird says, this is all during the Dishonored run. How much of what the Corvo does is attributed to his skill and how much of the Outsider's power? I imagine that at least part of it is attributed to the powers he gains from the Outsider, but as has been mentioned several times, Corvo was able to kill several people who were empowered with the Outsider's power by himself before he was empowered. So I'd say it's kind of like a 70-30 spread. Lord Harriman says, what is the best show that's been inspired by Star Trek, or trying to be a clone thereof, that isn't just another Star Trek show? Farscape, because it's literally the only example of that I can think of. Like, I'm sure that, oh my god, what's it called? What's the Scott MacFarlane show called? Help me out. I can't think of his damn name. The Orville. I'm sure The Orville is a perfectly good show, but it's a Star Trek show, through and through. Like, that's the tone and the vibe. I'm going to delete a couple things here. What is your most favorite memorable side quest from any game? Oh, there's so many. In so many directions. So I'm going to go with the very first one that came to my mind, which is, of course, Gnomebliteration, which is a quest they added in Cataclysm in World of Warcraft. It's hard to describe because words will not do it justice, but I want you to imagine that you are playing a giant flaming ball of death, and there are hundreds of gnomes everywhere who scream delightfully as you run over them. Have I seen, Ect, sorry, I keep forgetting to say their names. Ect says, have you seen anything about Doki Doki? I assume you mean the Literature Club, to which the answer is yes. 86 Malin asks, favorite and least favorite music genre? Not applicable. Doesn't actually matter to me. All I care about is the quality of the songs. Lotario asks, if I joined the military, could I emotionally handle being in the situations Captain Price goes in? Nope. Glad I didn't. Jay Palmer says, are there any good video games that have no audio whatsoever? Nope. Seriously, I can't think of a single one. Most games have some audio to some extent or another. Evo asks, do you like miniatures? If yes, do you have any? In the context of the question, I'm going to say no. Obviously, I don't have any miniatures. But I do like BattleTech minis. In fact, I have one I was hoping to build on camera someday. Literally right behind me. Because battle mechs are cool. Drunkillorn asks, what are your opinions about our player characters being characters versus just a name at a game? So I've actually said this 1,000 times, so forgive me for being brief here, because this is a common topic. I vastly prefer playing a character over playing an insert, a blank sheet. I would substantially rather actually play Geralt than Gordon Freeman, to put it into simple and obvious terms. There's so much more you can do with that than playing some rando who isn't actually part of the narrative. Excuse me. I actually answered that question, answered that question, answered that question. Hang on, I've actually answered several of these questions. Give me a minute. Yeah, the hero of Cyrodiil. Who are they? Maw. Like, at least the Warden in Dragon Age is a character by virtue of the dialogue options. But... this sounds like a joking question, but sure. Jay Palmer says, is it possible to fit Modern Warfare 1 and 2 into the Stellaris canon? Yeah, it's really easy to fit any pre-space story into Stellaris canon. All you have to do is set it before they go to space. Done. We did it. Like, there's no effort there. Is it polemic to say that Modern Warfare has a modicum of cool factor? No. You can tell we're up to Modern Warfare now in our streaming. So Mr. Red says, what's the most excessive gun design in an FPS? Oh, geez, I don't know. So there's the obvious examples, but the problem is there's several FPSs which I haven't played that deliberately lean into the ridiculous, and I have no idea what kind of guns they have. So it's probably one of those. Having said that, I do love the quad chain gun, which is from Doom 4 specifically, so that's my personal pick. Because that gun is awesome. Yeah, if you look up, hang on, if you literally Google search right now, Mordaka. Let's see what we get. Yeah, literally the first image result from Mordaka is an orc who is wielding a triple flamethrower chain gun, which is mounted on another triple flamethrower chain gun. So yeah, no, it's probably Warhammer 40k. Not an FPS though. Plutonia says, if you had to decide which setting to have a new historical Call of Duty campaign, which setting would it be? Oh, that's tough, because Call of Duty is all about shooting, and that means we can only go back so far. Sorry, yes, Dakka is spelled D-A-K-K-A, as Huthor just said in chat. Yeah, the bullet belts have bullet belts, exactly. World War II? No, we've done that way too much. No. Yeah, I was actually thinking the Napoleonic Wars. Because there was gunfire, there were guns in the Napoleonic Wars that could work. I was also vaguely thinking, I'm not there, Zactaf. We're going down the queue. I'm not answering your question, probably today, because I'm going down the queue. Okay, Zactaf, that's the whole point of going through the queue right now, is to get through it. The 7 Years' War is actually another really good pick. The one I was actually thinking, though, was a little bit further back, which is the Sengoku Jidai. I know I talk about that all the damn time, but gun monks and guns were a thing, and there were definitely individual missions that people could undertake and be part of certain battles in which gunplay was absolutely a thing. The downside is that might be too far back, because those are using really primitive guns at that point. Still, something I think could work. Nevertheless, something a little bit more modern, like the Civil War, which Sean mentioned, the American Civil War, excuse me, or the 7 Years' War that Grey Wolf mentioned, I think both of those would be great picks as well. Ventures says, do you play any multiplayer shooters? Why not? So obviously the answer to that question is no. Now there's two reasons for that. Reason number one, it's really, really boring to me. I've talked about this before. Versus gameplay has absolutely no interest to me at all. I have delved into it several times in my life, but I get extraordinarily bored with it very quickly. And I can only describe it as there's nothing to do. Like, I'm not doing anything. I'm not playing the video game. All I am doing is trying to beat someone else. Versus gameplay just has no meat for me. It's like having a bowl that probably smells good, but there's no food on the bowl. And I'm just saying, like, well, there's nothing to eat. That's PvP gameplay. So that's the first reason. But the second reason is the cheaters. I've told this story before, but to repeat it very briefly, back when Gary and I actually did play Modern Warfare 2, specifically, multiplayer, just to hang out and play with it for a bit, as we played, we didn't play for very long, we ran into an increasing amount of hackers and aimbots as we were going, and it pretty much made us put the game down. So... Usurper Deicide, love the name, says, where do you see the gaming industry going forward in the next 5 years? They're probably going to be a lot more mobile games and a lot more focus on mobile practices in terms of stretching those out into otherwise normal games. And I feel like what's going to happen is the indie space is going to continue to expand into the AA space, and we're going to see a new indie space built in that space as game development gets a little bit more accessible for people who can actually do it and not have anything backing them. And the kind of thing they could do in their spare time, rather than like some of the success stories we've already seen, which is someone devoting their life for 5 years to making a game. Usurper Deicide also says, if you could make a game, what game would you make and why? Yes, I have so many game ideas in my head. I have notes. I have started taking notes because, as I literally just talked about, making games is getting easier and cheaper, so it is something I actually want to go into someday, and there are lots of games I want to make someday. So, yes. Usurper Deicide asks, do you think aliens are out there? Nope. If they are, it doesn't matter. Jay Palmer says, do you know you can die by touching the silo doors while they're opening? Yes. Did you know that TSB is going to sleep? Yes. Hang on. Delete. Mr. Red says, is there a morality system in any game that gets gameplay positives? I can't think of any off the top of my head, so I'm going to default towards no. If I was a member of a crack military squad, what position would I fulfill, and what would be my call sign? I would most likely be all the way back with the sniper rifle. And my call sign, of course, would be the Overlord. Jay Palmer says, how do you think Soap got his call sign, given the call signs are good for embarrassing things? So, that first day at Section, oh my god, he smelled so bad. You have no idea. Ect says, is there anything you are good at, but don't enjoy doing it? Actually, there's quite a bit that I am good at and don't enjoy doing, such as ruminations. I already answered this question. I answered this question. I answered this question. Hang on. Hang on. I've actually answered quite a few of these. Give me a minute. Drunk Killorn says, since the vast majority of current FPS games are primarily multiplayer, with campaign games, the campaign portion of the game being shorter in comparison to games like Modern Warfare 2, do I think single-player campaigns will be eventually discontinued entirely? Funny thing to ask, because the most recent Call of Duty game did not have a campaign mode, or maybe it's the second one recent. I do think that's definitely a direction they're drifting in, and honestly, if they're going to do that, commit to it. If you're going to make a multiplayer-focused game, make a multiplayer-focused game. Just do it. Just do it. It's an easier way for me to never care about it. Alright, so. Oh my gosh. There's another Evo question. I know, Gavator. It's like they can't make up their minds. Like, should we do this? I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't. I don't know. They have bounced around on that one far too much. Hang on, I need to do something here really quick. Give me just a moment, please. Actually, answer that question. Okay. Ect asks an interesting question. Ect says, your setting has things called echoes. What are they and what they do? Jesus. Okay, so I don't know how to summarize that. Echoes are energy beings that have to maintain a degree of consistency, in a physicality in order to interact with the physical world. If they lose their physicality, they functionally die. Echoes have the ability to effectively form whatever shape they need to or want to, So they are, practically speaking, shapeshifters. And their primary focus is to go and to help people. And that's the super summary. A much lengthier discussion I could probably do at some point. But let's just leave it at that for right now, especially since I don't think Ect is even here for this one. Hopefully we'll see that in the thing. Ect also asks, have you had the displeasure of being flashbanged before? No, I still have the use of my eyes. Mr. Red says, what's the worst gun in a Call of Duty game? The pistol. It's always the pistol. Evo says, when is an estimated date of the Diablo rewrite release? 2 days ago. Hang on, scrolling down. Don Crow says, what food brand would you be happy to be sponsored by? I don't know. I mean, I guess one of my seltzer waters, so that'd be Polar at the moment. Although I don't know who owns Polar, so I don't know if they're cool or not. I could say Oreos, but I don't know who owns Nabisco and how messed up they are. I have a bit of a lack of information on that one, so I'd probably lean towards just not accepting. I actually already answered that one. Casual Gladio says, do you think Final Fantasy VIII's cast works with late teenagers, or would I push them up into their 20s? No, it absolutely requires them to be teenagers. It's actually part of the primary narrative, and it's one of the reasons we are not aging them or shrinking their age in RFF8, because they have to be child soldiers for the majority of the plot to actually work. Yeah, exactly, Gavator. It's really messed up if you ever look it up and figure out how few companies own which franchise. Look up airlines sometime. Look up how many airline companies exist here in the States. It's a pretty small number. Correct, Dr. Winter. Gum says, marry, kiss, or kill Patrick Stewart, Keith David, or Hugh Jackman. So obviously, I marry Patrick Stewart, I kill Hugh Jackman, and I kiss Keith David. Subacom asks a question I don't understand. Zakdaf asks, Sue Meyer back in Persona 5... What? Who's Sue Meyer? Hang on, let's hit Google really quick. Who is Sue Meyer? Who are you? Aha! Gotcha. The redhead in Persona 5. Okay, so the redhead in Persona 5, I'm sure Ezio could persuade her to join him and ditch the doc. He is good with the ladies. Actually, in that exact case, I'm not sure that would work. However, regardless of her status as being female, I think Ezio might be able to accomplish that, because Ezio's biggest thing was always charisma. Ivo Iliani asks, what does raspberry jam refer to? In terms of good or bad, like, will it be good raspberry jam? So raspberry jam as a core concept is something that visually indicates you that you are low on health. We've actually encountered good raspberry jam over the years. And we've also encountered an overwhelming ton of bad raspberry jam. Bad raspberry jam is easy. In it. Like, if you ever played the original Pokemon games, you know what bad raspberry jam is. And of course, there's the thing that gave the term its name, Call of Duty. But good raspberry jam is something that's like a little subtle thing, or maybe something that fades in and out. We started to see this in most modern Nintendo games, actually. They've gotten very good about making the raspberry jam unobtrusive, but still present. You know, the kind of thing that you can still notice it without having it being in your face. Dr. Winter says, from memory, what's your favorite side quest in Oblivion? I feel like I answered this one, but it's either the hallucination quest for the Fighters Guild, or the one you're thinking of right now when I talk about favorite side quest in Oblivion, the freaking house. The Dark Brotherhood mission. I can't think of the name of it. It was just mentioned earlier. It's the Dark Brotherhood mission where you have to go kill a bunch of people, and there's lots of ways that can go. It depends on the game, Pillars of Snow, in some circumstances. Yeah, the party. I don't remember what it's called. Noctis X Soul asks, favorite gibberish soundbite? Oh, anything in Sims 3. Anything in Sims 3. Absolutely. Yeah, I think I did actually answer that one, Dr. Winter, but whatever. Just being thorough. I know I answered that one. Hang on. Worst meal, Yada Kudahi asks, worst meal you've ever had that was competently cooked? Any kind of seafood, I would say. I've mentioned this before. Ever since the surgery, the kidney stone surgery, I can't do seafood. I've never really fully understood why. So, lots of seafood. Can't do it. It's the smell. Fife asks, is there a game that's caused a lot of controversy after getting a bad review? I mean, there's Zelda Breath of the Wild, which was absolutely ridiculous. But actually, there's lots and lots and lots of examples of games that got bad reviews and people were just whinging about it. But if you mean me giving a game a bad review, usually I don't really generate that much controversy, probably because I'm a dinky little insignificant speck in one tiny corner of the internet. But I have had plenty of people come after me over the years who are all very, very upset at me because I have given a negative to a game they like. I even lost a friend over that. That's not a joke. Bamber FM asks, have you ever had the misfortune of watching the 2022 film Prey? I never even heard of it. So that's going to be a no. Hanka says, are you interested in covering The Last of Us show? Not only am I not interested in it, I'm probably going to go ahead and veto it if anybody tries to add it. No thank you. From Killorn says, why do FPS campaigns tend to be shorter than other genres single-player campaigns, in your opinion? Ironically, it's probably partially because of how much time and effort it takes to make a good single-player campaign good. Like Modern Warfare 1 and 2, they're very short games. They're like 4-hour games. But think about the density of those missions. Think about how many different areas and how many different methods of play and how the pacing works and the variety of weapons and the AI and there's so much that goes into that. It is actually very, very dense. And that is almost assuredly one of the big reasons why that's been true for years. Even going back to like Half-Life and some of the earlier campaign games for FPSs, those are still short games, right? Same reason. Sub-Zero asks a polemic question, which we're going to delete. Delete. We actually wrote several of these. I actually answered that one. I've answered several of these. Yeah, shortness or longness doesn't matter. It's what you do with it. Go ahead, get it out of your system. But it's true. A 4-hour game that's excellent is better than a 40-hour game that's average. That's all I'm going to say about that. Thank you, Dream Whisperer. Did you know I got a lot of negativity about that one, too? So Pillars of Snow asks a question. So, referring to Modern Warfare 2, if this game has such a good story and gameplay, and it super did, it's one of our highest ranking games, why is the series seen as nothing but mindless games for dude bros and preteens in so many circles? Pillars of Snow also mentions that they're pure evil, which is part of that. So, I don't blame you for being pure evil, it's okay. But, having said that, part of the problem is that people are stupid. Let me walk that back. All of the problem is that people are stupid, but there's lots of slices of stupidity. Some people look at a game that is shooting other people and they think there's no depth or layers or nuance or subtlety that can be that. It's just a shooter game. That's not art. You can't have art in a game about shooting people. That's ridiculous. So you've got a bit of elitism on top of everything else. You also have some people who will do nothing but play the multiplayer. And let me be very blunt. The multiplayer of a lot of FPS games, Modern Warfare included, is just an absolute cesspit. It is absolutely where all of these so-called dude bros, what do we call them instead of bros? Trolls? We came up with a new term for it, I can't remember. Anyways, the dude whatevers, and preteens and whatever, that's that, right? That's most of where that's going. The dude bags, that's it, for scumbags. The dude bags! So that's where you're seeing the dude bag mentality come in, most assuredly. But then on top of that, there's also the fact that there is a bit of... I'm trying to think how to explain this. There's a bit of an assumption that... Let me put it to you this way. Let me explain this way. Have you ever heard the... what's the word? The bias? No, that's the wrong word. The thing where a lot of people tend to assume that monster movies... that kaiju movies are mindless nonsense drivel. I'm sure you've encountered that at some point in your life. You might not have, but it's a fairly common thing that people just go to watch these brainless flicks about giant robots and giant monsters smashing cities. And that's all there is to them. There's no depth, there's no layers. You get where I'm going with this. Because a lot of people have the tendency to forget that those kind of cultural consciousness things, those kind of large-scale mentalities are wrong. I mean, that's ignoring the fact that the original Godzilla film, which is my personal favorite, by the way, of the franchise, is actually primarily a character piece. Or yeah, how about the idea that Kingdom Hearts is a big convoluted mess that's just darkness and hearts? Or maybe the idea that the Final Fantasy series, why do they call it Final Fantasy? Because it's a series that won't die. Or even talking about how the Rocky films won't stop making sequels of themselves. And there's these cultural consciousness things that are almost always wrong, but even if they have kernels of truth in them, it's like looking at... I'm going to not use an analogy. It's just looking at things on a surface level. This is way too long of an answer. I apologize, pillagers don't, but I hope this makes sense, because that's exactly where that crap comes from. It's just people who don't know what they're talking about agreeing with a lot of other people who don't know what they're talking about. Evo asks, how long should I want to be Tristram? Good question. We'll ask that 2 days ago. We did play the Croatia thing. Hang on, I gotta start scrolling down here a bit. Is the Diablo rewrite going to be shown before the Diablo run? Hang on, we're just going to scroll down a little bit here. How would I feel if first grade students were given proverbs such as, a person without a state is like a nightingale that can't sing, or there's nothing more beautiful than a state, or it's not scary to die for your state, or to love one's state is to serve one's state. Other than vomiting all over my screen, Gum Gum, I think my reaction would be the exact one you're expecting. AKA, duh. Jay Palmer says, are you going to do commentary like during the Zelda Theater you did last year? Yes, I did. Did do. Can confirm. Melkor Blade says, what game do I want to speedrun the most besides Super Metroid? Want to speedrun? Well, that's a good question, actually. At this point, I don't know. It's been out of my mind for so long, I haven't thought about it that much. Like, obviously, there's the Mega Man games, there's LTTP, you know, there's Dread. Yeah, there's Metroid Dread. There's Final Fantasy VI, of course. I'd love to get back into speedrunning and doing Kefka races on that. I don't know, I haven't thought about it because speedrunning is probably never happening again. Excuse me. Jay Palmer says, what's the worst someone ever tried to rip you off? Ooh. I think I'm going to go with Comcast, who charged me something like 200-something odd dollars a month, I forget the exact number, for internet that did not have a data cap. That's it. It wasn't good internet. I mean, there's a reason we used to have the Comcast emote in chat, right? It was just, it didn't have a data cap. And yes, it is Doom Rider. Eclectic Oak says, are you aware of the Dagoth TTS AI voice thing? Unfortunately, yes. Whoa! Hang on. I lost my place because it added a question to the queue. Give me a second. Oh, where was I? No, it's okay, Dr. Winter. It's just, it refreshed the page, so it's like, ugh. Walker asks, what is the update that Bloodstained is waiting on? Co-op, which will probably never happen at this point. One of these days, I'm just going to pull the trigger and say, screw it. We're just streaming it and we're getting on with it. Trihexia says, what do you think a society would look like after a zombie apocalypse, after a cure is created, but the once infected people are left with a distinguishing feature that shows they used to be a zombie? I mean, other than the obvious social biases that would probably rise up as being marked or unmarked, I think most people wouldn't give a damn for the first several years because survival would be first on the line. And since it probably wouldn't be genetically inherited, it would go away within a generation. Jay Palmer says, what's your most disliked class in WoW? Rogue. No question. Rogues suck. I hate rogues. And the only person who would ever play a rogue... I think Bragwood's AFK. Umbral Magma says, if you could have a Pokemon as a pet, what would it be? I would not. Pokemon are not pets, they are people. Jay Palmer says, what zone and WoW would you want to live in? The Valley of the Four Winds. That answer hasn't changed in years, and honestly, it's probably never going to change. Magister of Quel'Thalas says... actually, I answered that one. Excuse me. Judo Joker says, what, in your opinion, is the most absurd criticism you've ever gotten regarding your content? So absurd is important because I've gotten a lot of negativity about my content, both valid and invalid. But absurd means whatever they're complaining about is completely ridiculous and has no basis in reality. The answer is, of course, and most obviously, the accusation that I am lazy. Me. Jay Palmer says, what is the console that has the most favorite games on it for you? Probably the SNES, unless we're counting the PC. If we're counting the PC crushes it, but it's probably the SNES even to this very day. I mean, we've got Super Metroid, Mega Man X1, Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger. This is all just right off the top of my head. We've got Secret of Mana, we've got Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Like, it just kind of crushes it in a lot of categories, so probably the SNES. Zach Taft, going back to Sumeyer, I know who that is now, says, I'm certain you agree some mental health experts thought Maruki did bad with treating Sumeyer. As you said, he took a Warhammer to a delicate nail. Yes, I agree with that sentence. Jay Palmer says, what's your favorite tier set in WoW? I'm not going to answer that, mostly because that's an insane question. Do you know how many tier sets are in WoW at this point in history? I'll give you a hint. There are a lot. I can't pick just one. Even picking one per class would be really, really hard. Look, Sean! Why the Valley of the Four Winds, Linarith? Okay, I'll pause on my answering questions to answer your question. Because we're just getting questionception going on here for some reason. It's a lush, fertile land with nice, friendly, affable people where you can just work the farmland, and the farmland is very, very arable and very lush, and they grow wonderful food, and it's just good food and nice times and nice vibes and nice people. That's pretty much ideal for where I'd like to live, in general. Whoops. Lord Harrimont says, best friendship between two women in a video game. It's actually a hard question, because of course it is. I can't even think of a female friendship in a video game. Help me out here. There's got to be one somewhere. I can think of two that I've written, but those aren't for video games. No, the problem is in Final Fantasy X too, those friendships are terrible. Like, actually terrible. Yeah, I feel like we discussed this one on stream, but I feel like I didn't really come up with anything. I think I'm going to default on that one. Bayonetta and Jean, that's not a friendship. Favorite boss fight of all time. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm not even gonna answer that. I'm not even gonna try. Usurper Deicide says, do you think there will be a Half-Life 3? Yes, there already has been twice. Judo Joker's up. Hang on, I already answered that one. Umbral Magnus says, have you ever thought about what you do in a Kingdom Hearts rewrite? Nope. However, that's not saying that's not going to happen. In fact, in all honesty, there is a very high likelihood there will be a Kingdom Hearts rewrite. But that's way down the line. I've got, like I said, I've got 5 other projects actively going right now. I'm thinking about the next 4 rewrites, which does not include Kingdom Hearts. Which is harder, asks Trihexia, Hearts of Iron 3 or 4? Well, I have actually played both, but I would say Hearts of Iron 4 is harder because it's so much more boring. At least that's how it was at launch. Hang on, there's some Crusader Kings questions, which we answered. Let's scroll down a little bit here. We definitely have answered several of these questions. Latario says, which game has had the best tutorial? To be completely honest, to this day, I still think it's Super Mario World. The only game that has ever challenged Super Mario World for tutorial quality is Portal 2. Yes. Yes, it's clearly Hogger, which is actually a pretty good boss fight in Kata. Latario says, why do you think The Sims have a strange language? Because it's substantially easier and better to record 5 or 6 voice lines of random nonsense for each actor than to actually record a near infinite amount of random dialogue that can apply in a huge variety of circumstances. Simlish was actually one of the better and more brilliant ideas for The Sims, and I mean that with sincerity. Because it adds the idea that the characters... I'd love to, Uthor. That the characters are actually talking to each other or to themselves, but without the baggage of the insanity that would be required to actually record all that dialogue in English or French or Japanese, whatever places that it's actually released in. That would be insane. So you record one thing each. It's the same language for every country it's released in. It sounds like they're talking, and it skips all the hassle of that. It was a brilliant move. Like, legitimately. I applaud whoever came up with Simlish. I've actually thought about doing the Simlish trick myself. Just coming up with a few nonsense lines and just kind of having that be the dialogue. You're gonna have to clarify that one, Uthor, because holy crap. Oh, I know Von Falkenstein. Sorry, you're not addressing that to me. I know, right, Playterville? It's weird to think about. Anyways, how do I judge a game that has only gameplay compared to a game that has story and gameplay? Well, the game that has both is automatically better, because that's a big deal to me. You might think, no, Lore, you're the person who says that, you know, there is no such thing as a game that does not have story. And that's actually not true. We have talked about this. In fact, I'll give you a specific example. We talked about this when we were playing through the Spyro trilogy. There are games out there which have an absence of story, and they're just concept games or puzzle games or whatever. Tetris comes to mind immediately. So if I was to review Tetris, which is kind of a typical example, but whatever, it would be a slightly different review than if I was to review something like, say, anything else. Even Super Mario Bros. 1 has story elements to it, but Tetris has nothing. And that's my point. It's just going to be a different style of review. If we were actually to sit down and review Tetris, I wouldn't even look at the story axis. It would stay at 0 forever, right? That's just what it is. Zactef says, Makoto back in Persona 5, when I say she is not a punk, so the Avengers would not see her as one, just see her as a young woman who needs some guidance. Probably, especially since she was certainly pro, shall we say, establishment. I already answered this question. Answer that question. Answer that question. Answer that question. I actually said those as we went. Sub-Zero asks an interesting question. Isn't it pointless to review a Paradox game while it's still in development? No, because here's the deal. Philosophically speaking, that's like saying, isn't it pointless to review an MMO, which, ironically, some people have actually said. But the point is, even as the game changes and morphs and is different, that just means the review can change and morph along with it. There is such a thing as going back and reviewing and re-reviewing something like Stellaris, for example. In fact, we already have precedence for that because we've already started funding patch content for Final Fantasy XIV's latest expansion, for example. Yeah, reviews can be updated, exactly. The only alternative is to either wait for an extremely long time, because EU4 is still going. You know, it's getting a new DLC like this freaking year, I think. Or to just not review them at all. And I'd rather not review them at all. Zobe says, you never credited my game for this month's subscription. Well, that's interesting. Zobe, what's my latest thing? So I have you for Xenogears, but that's forever ago. So you're correct. I do not have you, Zobe. So when and how did you donate? Because I do not have a donation for you. Unless it's almost assuredly not this one. Hang on. Nope, it is absolutely not. You subbed, okay. Do you know when you subscribed? Because that might help me to find it. Gonna hit the stream break for a second here. Because if the answer is like 10 seconds ago, then I actually have the answer for you immediately. A few weeks ago. Right. You know what? Sure. I'm going to assume that you are not lying to me. And I will just put a sub to Xenogears right now for that. Because looking up a sub that happened a few weeks ago is not happening. Ironically, the last donation I have from you is a sub towards Xenogears, but that was a while ago. So, anyways. 86 Malin says, I was wondering where a lot of the old reviews on the website went, and then I noticed the old archives page. May I ask why you archived them? Because they're not valid. Those reviews are completely invalid. And those don't count. Those are old, outdated, and no longer relevant or valid. They're not valid. Valid. But I archived them because some people asked me to not delete them completely, so you can still go find it if you want to. No, it'd be my fault, Zobi, if I missed it. Which, I have no idea because it was weeks ago, so I don't even know what was happening weeks ago. Unless it was happening during the short dark, although I caught most of those, I thought. But anyways, whatever. Either way, it doesn't matter. We're moving on. Gum says, how does the hegemony greet a new nation? Do they offer them citizenship to be placed in the hole? But if they back away, they get forced into it, or do they do it in another fashion? I suppose that would depend on the state of the new nation they find. As usual, I can't answer your question without further clarification, Gum. Let's see here. Delete. We're in the Crusader Kings 3 at this point here. Zactaft asks, would you let Ghost Rider have his way with Akechi? No. Of course, I wouldn't let Ghost Rider have his way with most people. Judo Joker says, have you ever heard of the Phantom Time Hypothesis? It's one of the most absurd and comical conspiracy theories ever. No, I have not. What the hell is the Phantom Time Hypothesis? Nobody, of course, will actually know here, so that's whatever. Hang on. I have no idea, Braven. I would have to just straight up Google it. Congratulations, Mr. Red. You have now created a conspiracy theory. Gum Duqueen asks, is there an act within the Empire where, say, the Senate is automatically safe from liability from individual members' unlawful acts, but can remove from the head of government's executive order? What? Okay, hang on. The Senate is safe from individual members' in unlawful acts, which is how that normally operates, but can be removed from the head of government's executive order. I don't understand what those two things have to do with each other. I'm also not sure how a Senate can be removed from an executive order. Also, there is no Senate within the Empire while we're on the subject, so I'm confused about everything about this. I'm just going to move on. Bamber asks, do you save scum in normal gameplay? I'm kind of hit or miss. I don't do it and I don't not do it. It's just whatever. I remember this question. I already answered this one. I already answered that one. I answered that one. Answer that one. I answered a lot of these. There's like a whole page of questions here. Ah, got you, Uthor. That sounds amusing. Lotario says, what's your most memorable what the heck just happened in Crusader Kings 2? Mine was when France turned into a theocracy. I don't think anything's going to surpass the Horus leadership. That's just... I don't think anything's going to get past that. Can I name 3 evil pragmatic characters in fiction? Yeah, I can name like 50. Delita High... whatever. Delita. We'll just say Delita. Arcturus Mengsk. And Emperor Palpatine. There you go. Boom. Done. That's done. That's done. That's done. All done. All of this is done. All of this is done. Lotario says, is Oblivion's story superior to Skyrim in your opinion? By memory, yes. Is it actually? Who knows? We'll see when we review it. I anticipate Oblivion will have a higher story score than Skyrim, however. Which Bethesda RPG series is your favorite, and which game from it is your favorite? Well, let's see. We've got Fallout, Elder Scrolls, anyways, of those two, I'm not sure which I prefer, honestly. Starfield isn't out yet. Doesn't count. This year, though. You know, this is going to sound weird. I'm not sure if I could pick between those two, because for me, the question is, do I like Fallout 3 or Oblivion better? And I know that sounds strange, but my point is, I'm not a huge fan of Morrowind. I can't stand Daggerfall or Arena, and Skyrim is not a game I'm a fan of. On the Fallout side, I don't like Fallout 1, I don't like Fallout 2, and I'm not that familiar with New Vegas. So that just leaves me with Fallout 3 and Oblivion. And those games are really, really close to each other in a lot of different ways, for good and for bad. So, I don't know, will be my answer to your question. Dr. Winter asks, why isn't Fallout 4 in the BRPG block? Deja vu. Anyways, the answer for the sake of the VOD is because I have no interest in it, and neither does anybody else. Dr. Winter says, of the portrayals of the player in Saints Row, which one was your favorite? Honestly, probably 2's. I liked being more of a character, first of all, but I also liked being, well, let's just call it what it is, the Joker. Like, we obviously cared, and we weren't completely evil, but we were not a good person. And we ran the Saints, the streets, or the... oh, God, I can't remember the name of the gang, the Purples, by virtue of terror. We terrified our minions into submission. And we were just a lot more bloodthirsty and brutal than everyone else around us. Gum Gum says, is there one military from history you tend to borrow ideas from? Nope. I sure hope so, Sean. What was your question? Gum Gum says, does Lore's citizens care for social reform unlike the Romans? The Romans didn't like social reform? No, I agree, Dr. Winter. I like Saints Row 3. Well, I like Saints Row 4's story better than 2's. But I still think the character of the boss was a lot more interesting in 2's. Gum Gum says, morally speaking, would you agree, as special as you are more special than anyone else? No. Judo Joker says, how skeptical or optimistic are you of Cities Skylines 2? That's a good question, honestly. I am a big fan of Cities Skylines, to be very clear. I'm actually really looking forward to that review. Oh, the downfall of E3. No, I'm on like page 9 of 41, Sean. I'm nowhere. I'll give me a second. How optimistic or skeptical am I of City Skylines 2? So, I mean, it's gonna be. It's always a hard thing to follow through on a situation like that. Crusader Kings 3 had the exact same problem because Crusader Kings 2 was a very complete package, and then Crusader Kings 3 came out and is not still as of this moment. We talked about that during the review. DLCs and expansions just naturally have to flesh out the product. That's just how it is. So I imagine City Skylines 2 will not be as good as City Skylines 1 with all the DLC and with all the expansions. But I'm still at least hopeful. It'd be nice if they could make a console version that doesn't suck. Now we're going to copy Sean's question from today and go back up here to page 9 and put it here. Sean says, is the downfall of E3 a net positive or net plus to gaming, or just a wash? We'll probably end the Q&A on this question, so let's do this here. It is my opinion that the loss of E3 now, and I stress the way I'm saying that, is a net positive to gaming as a whole, for several reasons. E3 obviously served very significant and dutiful purpose for quite some time, and was a great way for companies to get word out. It was a great way for new game ideas to get some real hands-on reactions from people, to get tangible feedback, that kind of stuff. But let's be honest, E3 is and always has been for the investors and for the companies, not for the gamers or the games. I'll tell you who has hated E3 for the last 30 years. It's the developers who have to throw together crap just for the E3 presentation booth. That is a large amount of time and work and effort to do a showcasing, which they could be spending doing anything else. And I guarantee you with total certainty, because this has happened many times, that a lot of those developers were working extra hours just to make this demo, and then would have to keep doing the same level of work they were already doing on the actual game itself. So from that perspective alone, I would say it's a net positive towards gaming, unless it gets replaced by something else which does the same damn thing. Also, the actual organization that ran the E3, the company, they sucked. So, screw them. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and cut off. It's 9 pages of questions. That's not too bad. We do have another 30 to go through. We'll probably do the rest of that after we finish Diablo, because tomorrow we're going to go ahead and play more Diablo 3, do some online stuff, do some co-op stuff, do some seasonal stuff, do some 70 stuff. So, I can't do it, Mike Romano. I don't have the strength.